Rhythm, jump, break your head in the back. East, I wants to wipe the sweat away. You're my little boy, be a looking away. Said I like it with a big white dream, and he kept on popping and said again.
My favorite. Hi, fellow. This is Glenn, your low-end music freak, back with video number 6. Starting off with Ry Cooder performing Get Rhythm, the great Johnny Cash song. This video is in response to Vinyl Richie and Mazzy's videos for naming so many guitarists. I think Mazzy did 21 and Vinyl Richie did 17, so not to play favorite, I thought I would do 19. So these aren't, I just wanted to start off with Ry Cooder because he is my favorite. This is my favorite Ry Cooder album, Paradise and Lunch. This is kind of a mixture of Tex-Mex and blues and kind of grimy folk and dirty guitar, and just a great album, this one. Anyway, Ry Cooder. Next. Oh, I'm so far. I got so much stuff here, guys. Jerry Garcia. Probably my second favorite guitar player. This is his Reflections album, right here. And this is his first solo album. That's a great album as well. Jerry has a wealth of stuff. This set is excellent. I think you can buy that on vinyl too. It's Merle Sanders and Jerry Garcia, the Keystone Companions. Terrific live stuff. This particular set has 4 discs. Great value from 1973. This is a set that the series that's been coming out now for about a year or two. It's from it's called Garcia Live Series. This was Volume 1. Volume 13 is currently being issued, I think, in another month or two. They're usually like 3 or 4 disc sets of live performances. This one from March 1st, 1980 at the Capitol Theater. I love the Jerry Garcia Band as much as I love the Grateful Dead. Jerry did some amazing stuff solo. Now, the other thing I love about Jerry is his playing with David Grisman. This is probably my favorite. This is an incredible album. They do a version of The Thrill Is Gone on here. Lots of great acoustic songs on here. They do an amazing version of Russian Lullaby. If you can, this is the MoFi SACD, but you can also get MoFi vinyl, which I have heard, and this is one of, maybe, like, arguably one of my best sounding CDs. It's great, and the vinyl I know sounds great. Check that out. This is another great one. This is called the Pizza Tapes. It's Jerry Garcia, David Grisman, and the incredible Tony Rice, the next guitar player I'm going to talk about. I don't know if you can see that photo there of the 3 of them. So they called this the Pizza Tapes because I understand Jerry took the tapes back to his house after they recorded them and ordered a pizza, and invited the pizza guy in to drop the pizza off, and I think the guy stole the tapes. If I've got that story right, it's so they ended up, when they got them back, they labeled this the Pizza Tapes. On this recording, Jerry and Tony Rice meet for the first time, and there's a little bit of dialogue interspersed with the music while they're jamming away. It's very cool to listen to them talk about meeting each other and a bit of their history and stuff. It's a great album. Now that I've started on the discussion of Tony Rice, I don't know how many of you are familiar with him. Tony is started as a bluegrass guitar player. He played with J.D. Crowe in the New South and the Bluegrass Band, which put out a few albums saluting Flat Scruggs and Bill Monroe and that. Tony has this amazing album out, if you get a chance. It is also on vinyl, Manzanita. Now this is kind of a bluegrassy album, folky bluegrass, no banjo, so it's all bluegrass instruments, mandolin, fiddle, guitar, bass, but no banjo in it. So being a banjo player, it's a bit disappointing, but most people can get enough of banjos, I think. So this is an outstanding album, highly recommend. If you're looking for something more mainstream from Tony, he's a big Gordon Lightfoot fan and made this album. Tony Rice sings and plays Gordon Lightfoot. Great songs on here. Some of the tunes, Go My Way, Home from the Forest, I'm Not Saying, Bitter Green, You Are What I Am, Walls, record of the Edmund Fitzgerald, Early Morning Rain. Terrific album. Tony Rice, amazing guitar player. The next gentleman I want to mention, now I got to find his stuff. Jerry Douglas. So I don't know if I'm cheating here or not. I guess the dobro can be considered a guitar. It's a Russophonic guitar. Jerry Douglas is the Jimi Hendrix of dobro. Here is one album of his called Look Out for Hope. It's more of a jazzy one. Great album. This one's autographed for me from Jerry when I saw him. Just an amazing record. You got to check that out. Jerry also plays with Alison Krauss in Union Station. He does all kinds of stuff with the dobro. It's not all like bluegrassy stuff. Here's one he did called Bourbon and Rosewater with B.M. Bott and Edgar Meyer, the great bass player. Great world music, this album. Check out Jerry Douglas if you get a chance. The other one I want to talk about is, again, I would rank my favorite guitar players as Ry Cooder, Jerry Garcia, and Duane Allman. So I wanted to bring this in because two of the guitar players I picked are in this band, Duane Allman and Dickie Betts. This is a classic, obviously, live at the Fillmore. One of the greatest live albums ever. Probably my pick for the greatest live album ever. Duane Allman, we all know his resume, his studio work, and the work with the Allman Brothers, and sadly passed away way too young in a motorcycle accident. But the thing was, once Duane passed away, you would have thought the Allman Brothers were over, and Dickie Betts really stepped up, and he was the only lead guitar player for quite a while in the band back when the Brothers and Sisters albums were coming out and that. And he did a terrific job. But anyway, Dickie Betts and Duane Allman. This particular set is a 6 CD set of all the performances from that Fillmore shows. Great set. It's also available in Blu-ray audio, I believe. Great album. Obviously a classic. Okay. One guy I wanted to mention, David Bromberg. I was watching a video of Mazzy's last night or the night before, and he pulled out a David Bromberg album in his Whack-A-Mole 60 video, and I freaked out because I had planned to talk about David in my video here. So David Bromberg was a session musician in New York. He's from New York. He has a heavy New York accent. Even when he sings, you can hear it. Amazing guitar player. He did session work for Phil Spector, did some session work with Bob Dylan. You can hear those tapes on the Another Self-Portrait bootleg series. They have some of David's stuff on there. But anyway, I first saw David Bromberg in, actually the first time I heard David Bromberg was on underground radio in Toronto, and I think around 1970, just when his first album was coming out. And my cousin and I were under the influence of some something. Anyway, we were up all night and we had the underground station on. They were rocking out and playing Hendrix or whatever, and all of a sudden they play this folky song called Delia. And we had no idea, never heard it before, didn't know who it was, and it was David Bromberg off his first album. He does an incredible version of that traditional folk song, and She's All I Got Is Gone, and it just blew us away. And we went in search of David's album, and then when he came to town, I went to see him. Later, he put the David Bromberg band together, which was a 7-piece band. They used to come to town a lot. It was such an eclectic band. These guys were so versatile. They could play anything. Like David could play, you know, amazing slide blues guitar, heavy blues, and then break into like a Irish fiddle tune. He'd play guitar, fiddle. The band had another musician in the band called Dick Faggy. He was from New York, and he played a banjo in that band. And he didn't play it all the time. He'd just pick it up when it suited him, and they'd go off and play something. And I fell in love with what he was doing with the banjo, and right away went out and bought myself a $75 banjo and started learning how to play. And I've been playing for 40 years, and so I owe a lot to David Bromberg and his band for inspiring me. This is one of my favorite David Bromberg albums, Wanted Dead or Alive. Great, great album. David is putting out a new album right now. I can't remember what it's called, but I just read about it the other day on the internet. It should be pretty good. He's got David Bromberg's band back together again. I also have, this is called David Bromberg, The Player, a retrospective. This is from the famous El Macombo, where the Rolling Stones played, and Elvis Costello did his live at the El Macombo thing. Here's David Bromberg's autograph from a little table menu. Let's see who else was playing then. Oh, Leo Kottke, Jan Hammer Group were also coming up then. Very cool. Beer. Let's see how much beer was back then. A 50-ounce jug of beer for $4.95. Holy smokes. Glass of beer, 85 cents. Those were the days. Anyway, I love David Bromberg. He was very influential in my life, and terrific guitar player. If you get a chance to listen to his stuff, do so. Here's another. This is a 2/4 CD. One of my favorite David Bromberg albums called My Own House. It's on here. There's a great song called Spanish Johnny on that album. If you could Google YouTube search or something for David Bromberg, Spanish Johnny. Beautiful, beautiful song. Okay, next, Michael Bloomfield. Now, Michael Bloomfield obviously played in Paul Butterfield. He played in Electric Flag. Played with Dylan on Highway 61 and on stage at Forest Lawn. This is the further adventures of Al Kooper and Michael Bloomfield. Great, great album. Great live album. They also did the Super Sessions album together. Michael Bloomfield has a lot of solo stuff out and a lot of session work. He's an amazing, amazing guitar player. Oh, there's so much stuff here. Sorry about this. Terry Kath. I don't know if anybody's mentioned Terry Kath. He's a guitar player with Chicago and great vocalist as well. This is an album I showed the other day, but live at Isle of Wight. Terry is a great, great guitar player. I mean, just listen to South California Purples, and all the leads on that first album are just fantastic. Great, great, great guitar player. Michael Hedges. If anybody's familiar with Michael Hedges, he also died too young. Really talented guy. He died driving along the coast of California. His car went off the side of a cliff, sadly, and they didn't find him for a few days. But I saw Michael Hedges open for, I think he was the opening act for a folk singer in the Toronto area called Stephen Faring, who's in Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. Anyway, Michael was incredible to see live. He was unbelievable, just a great guitar player. He used to play a guitar that had I don't know how many strings on it. It's like it had the neck and then it had a bunch of strings on top of it, like a harp almost running along the top. And he played them, and he was just a real lively acoustic guitar player. And anything you can find from Michael Hedges is well worth listening to. He's an amazing guy. The great Shuggy Otis. This is Shuggy's latest album, called Interfusion. This was Carmen Apiece on drums, Shuggy Otis, Tony Franklin on bass. Great record. This is an incredible record. The Cooper Sessions. This is kind of the Super Sessions Part 2, but with Shuggy Otis and Al Cooper. There are a couple of blues tracks on here that will blow your mind if you like the early Johnny Winter sound of guitar. It sounds like that, but even better. It's just mind-blowing how good this guy was. He was a child prodigy, when he was a young, like 14 years old, and he played, I think, with Zappa a bit too, and just an incredible talent. Martin Barre. Jethro Tull's one of my favorite bands, and Martin Barre is a phenomenal guitar player. I don't think he gets enough credit. I saw Martin Barre a couple of years ago at a small club in Toronto, the Martin Barre Band, and they were just amazing. He can still play. This is called Away with Words. Totally instrumental album. He does some instrumental versions of Tull songs plus his own original compositions. Terrific album. Martin Barre. Here's another one called Back to Steel. This is a more rockin' type album. There's a couple of acoustic stuffs. He does a version of Eleanor Rigby on here that's fantastic. Check out any of the solo Martin Barre stuff, and obviously all the Tull stuff that everybody's familiar with. Mr. Zappa. I think that's the one that we've all mentioned, Lionel Richie and Mazzy and myself. Frank, the genius of Frank Zappa. Great guitar player. I mean, Frank's like, he was like born on another planet from everyone else. He's just phenomenal. This is the Roxy box, which I showed on my favorite box sets. Really, if you want to, Frank's live guitar playing demonstrated, this is it. It's a terrific box set. Only sells for about 50 or 60 bucks. It's got 7 CDs in it. You can't go wrong with that. Robert Fripp, King Crimson. I'll just show the first King Crimson album. Robert has a style all his own. I mean, he can get raunchy and loud and metally, and he can play very subtle stuff. Just a very amazing guitar player. I've seen King Crimson. They have a new edition of the band that's started out now since about 1914 or 1915, and they've been touring every year. Tony Levin's in it, the great bass player. Mel Collins playing saxes, and they got 3 drummers. It's a great band, great live performance. If they come to your town, check out the King Crimson. They're amazing. What they do is on their websites they have a thing called a celebration package, and it's expensive, but I did go because I wanted to treat myself to something, and they give you basically a backstage pass, but it's pre-show, so you line up at like 5:30 and they let you in. There was about 30 of us at the Toronto show, and one of the band members comes out and does a Q&A. David Singleton, the manager, comes out and talks about King Crimson and everything that goes on with them and how the show is all put together and everything. And then Robert Fripp came out for about 15 minutes and talked. It was and then they gave us T-shirts and a CD and autographed program for the band, and it was one of the greatest concert experiences of my life. If you're a fan, check out the celebration package. Okay, Robert Fripp. Steve Howe, yes, amazing guitar player. I'm late to the party with Yes. You know, back when they came out in 1970 or 71 or whatever it was, I I didn't get it. I was more still into the classic blues rock stuff and Zeppelin and all that, and it was just a bit too far out for me. I didn't understand it. And then about 10 years ago, I just, for some reason, thought I'd go back and start listening to bands that I've kind of ignored, and I fell in love with Yes. So they're now one of my favorite bands. I saw Yes about 4 years ago in town of Oshawa, Ontario, in their hockey rink there, which holds about maybe 5,000 people. And so John Anderson wasn't there. They had the fake John Anderson. I can't remember what his name is now, but he did a good job on the vocals. But Steve Howe was there, and Chris Squire was there before he passed. One of the greatest guitar demonstrations I've ever seen live. He wasn't even in his prime. I was just blown away by how talented Steve Howe was. This is a box set called 7 Shows from 1972. Somehow these tapes were unearthed a while ago, and they found them and they restored them and put them out. It's shows from Maple Leaf Gardens, Ottawa Civic Center, Duke University, Greensboro Coliseum, University of Georgia, Knoxville Civic Coliseum, and Nassau Memorial Coliseum. All the shows are the same set list, but there's definitely a difference in how they play the songs, and it's a freaking great set. I absolutely love it. The sound quality is pretty good, and yeah, check that out if you're interested, if you're a Yes fan. David Lindley. David I first became aware of with his playing with the early Jackson Browne albums. This really made me love this Jackson Browne album, For Every Man. David Lindley's playing throughout this is just so good and so sweet. He makes this album as far as I'm concerned. I got a chance to see Jackson Browne early on, and when this album came out in 72 or whenever it was, and 73. Fantastic performance of David Lindley. I mean, he just steals the show. He's an incredible guitar player. I've seen him since. I saw him with Ry Cooder back in probably the early 90s, and then with himself a couple of times in smaller venues. That was his first solo album, El Rayo X. The classic song on this is Mercury Blues. Incredible guitar player, slide player. He can play anything with strings on it, this guy. Amazing. Jorma Kaukonen. I showed this album the other day, called Quay. Great acoustic album. Fantastic. He's just a great acoustic guitar player. Something that came out a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, was the Owsley Stanley Foundation, the Sonic Journals, Jorma and Jack, Before We Were Them. This is a performance from the Memorial Building, Santa Rosa, California. I think June 28, 1969. This is an incredible CD. I'm not sure if it's available on vinyl or not, but my God, this is mind-blowing. This is so good. Jorma Kaukonen. Alvin Lee. Again, I showed this album the other day when I was doing the vinyl. This is the Cap Ferret Sessions, the album that we released posthumously. It's a fantastic record on blue or green vinyl. It looks green to me. I think it looks blue on the screen, so we'll, whatever. Here's a Alvin Lee anthology. A big 10 Years After fan. The only time I ever saw them live was at the Festival Express in 1970 in Toronto. Last but not least, Jimi. I had to do Jimi Hendrix. How can you leave Jimi Hendrix off a best of list? This was the Songs for Groovy Children set that came out last year. It's the complete performances from the Band of Gypsy shows. The CDs, there's 5 of them. Amazing set. I know this is available on vinyl too. How can you go wrong with Jimi? I saw Jimi Hendrix at Maple Leaf Gardens in 1969. That was a real treasured moment for me to have seen him. That was actually the same day that he got busted for heroin at the airport in Toronto, and ended up coming back a few months later and standing trial. Anyway, that's it for my showcase of Guitarists. I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people before I stop. There's been a couple of VC members that have really given me a lot of encouragement in these early videos. Steve Carlson and Rob Walker. I just want to thank them. I really appreciated your support and some of the advice you gave me. So we will see you guys soon. Have a safe week. Thank you very much.